Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to a new episode in my new editor talk series. So this will be the second video in my new editor talk series. I'll have the playlist link down below in the description if you missed the first one or if you're watching this in the future and there are more out now. The first video was all about common issues and mistakes that I see in writing. I guess I probably should have started with saying hi. My name's Katie. I'm a writer and a freelance editor. So for today's video, I thought we would take it back to the very beginning and talk about rough drafts. More specifically, how to get the rough draft down on paper in the most painless way possible. So I'm going to be giving you my best tips for how to finish the rough draft and still enjoy the process. If you have any other tips, I would love to hear about them down below in the comments. And I'm partnering with Campfire on today's video. Campfire Pro is a writing software with tons of different tools to help keep you organized and to plan your novel. We're going to talk a little bit more about outlines and planning and stuff before the rough draft in just a little bit. But Campfire has lots of different tools that you can use. There are character pages to help you keep track of character details and their backstories and their different relationships with each other. There's a timeline feature to help you plan out your plot points, and you can even track character arcs and the different locations in your story. And then they have an additional world building pack, like an extension pack if you're writing sci-fi or fantasy, and this one lets you track things like religions, languages, cultures, magic systems, and things like that. You can get Campfire Pro by itself as a one-time purchase for $49.99. It's not like a subscription method. You buy it once, it's yours forever. And then the world building extension pack you can get for an additional $24.99. And they also offer a free trial on their website if you just want to try it out and see if you like it. Definitely if you're someone who's really visual and you need to see all of the organization, or if you're just a really disorganized person and you have a hard time keeping everything straight in your head, this will be really helpful for you. Or if you're writing a series and you really need to remember all of the details from every single book to keep them consistent, I could definitely see this being super helpful for you. So I'll have a link down below in my description if you want to check them out. And without further ado, let's get into my 8 tips for writing an easier rough draft. Tip number 1 really goes for newer writers, but I think it's important for everyone to know as well, as you need to figure out what kind of writer you are. I know there's a lot of discussions, especially on YouTube, about plotters versus pantsers, which basically means people who like to outline or people who just kind of like to fly by the seat of their pants and just figure it out as they go. And those two make sense to me, but I also feel like it almost makes it sound too black and white, like you're either one or the other, and that's definitely not the case. Every writer has their own unique process. I think it's really important for you to give yourself time early on to figure out what works for you. Now, this may take some experimenting. Honestly, for myself, when I was figuring this out, I tried a different process for every book that I wrote until I found one that worked. And it took me a long time to realize that I am 100% through and through a discovery writer, which means I like to plan a little bit in advance. I have a vague idea of what's going on. I know who the main characters are. I have some scenes in my head, some plot points I know I want to get to, but how I'm gonna get there and everything that's gonna happen in the book, I don't outline every little thing ahead of time. I have to figure it out as I go. And what's interesting is I'll write like the first 2 chapters, and by the end of the second chapter, it'll occur to me what happens in the third chapter, and I'll write myself some notes, like I kind of outline the third chapter before I write it. And then as I'm writing it, the 4th chapter will come to me and I go aside and I outline it and then I write it. So I kind of outline the next chapter as I go. And that's just what works for me. And to make things even more complicated, oftentimes you have to revise your own process because it might be different for every book that you write. So you get to the end of one book and you're like, yes, I finally got my process down. And then you try to write a new book and you realize that process isn't gonna work anymore and you're gonna have to find some different way to try it. And even though I'm a discovery writer and I don't like outlining my book all the way through before I start writing it, I love outlines and I need outlines. I just use them at a different part in my process. I write my draft 0 or my rough draft in that more discovery kind of style, and then after I finish that first draft, I make an outline of what I have, and then using that outline I revise and I make a new outline, which is kind of my plan for revision. So I use outlines more in the revising stages than the drafting stages, but that's just what works for me. You need to figure out what works for you. Don't get so caught up in what other people are doing or what other people say you should do. If you love outlines and you're a hardcore plotter, you need to know everything that happens ahead of time, then go with it. If that takes all of the excitement out for you and you need to figure it out as you go, then write it that way. Your writing process is going to be unique to you, and you're only doing yourself a disservice if you don't give yourself the time and the space to experiment and figure out what works best for you. Tip number 2 is to set goals and deadlines to help with accountability. This is especially true if you're not published, if you're not under contract, if no one else is making these deadlines for you. You need to make them for yourself. Otherwise, you're never gonna finish. You have no sense of urgency. You have no need to finish by a certain date. You could just keep working on it forever because there's no end in sight. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could do this. Join a community like NaNoWriMo or Camp NaNoWriMo. I think those are really good communities, especially for early writers, because it just helps teach you about consistency and deadlines and writing a little bit every single day. If you don't know what NaNoWriMo is, it's National Novel Writing Month, and the goal is to write 50,000 words by the end of the month, which granted isn't usually the length of a full-length novel, but it's a solid draft for a lot of people. If NaNoWriMo isn't your style, there's plenty of other ways to keep yourself accountable. Personally, I vlogged one time writing my rough draft. It's up on my YouTube channel. I'll put a link for it down below, where I vlogged a clip of myself every single day updating my writing progress until I finished the book. And that made sense because I have a YouTube channel, but it really helped me with accountability and finishing this book because I think I was writing it over the summer. It was like a random time during the year. Even if I had never ended up posting that video, it still would have really helped keep me accountable because I had to sit down in front of a camera every single day and say, this is how much I wrote today. And if every day I sat down and was like, oh, I didn't write, I just watched TV instead, I think I'd feel pretty bad about myself. So maybe for you, start a blog where you update your progress every day. Even if no one else ever sees it, you could keep it on private. It's just a way to keep yourself accountable. You could find some writing buddies, write together, all encourage each other to get the draft done. A website that I really love, it's called Pacemaker Planner. I'll have a link for it down below. It's basically just a writing tracking website. You can just use the free version. That's what I use. And you just put in your word count every single day and it makes these graphs for you so you can see your progress. You can put in your different goals and stuff. And I use that website every single time I'm drafting if I'm not using the NaNoWriMo website, just because I like seeing graphs and seeing my progress and tracking every day. So I find that website really helpful. Set goals, set deadlines, keep yourself accountable. And definitely take that at your own pace. If writing the novel in 1 month like NaNoWriMo is just totally unrealistic for you, tell yourself, I'm gonna finish this book in 6 months. I'm gonna finish this book in 3 months. I wanna write 1,000 words a day. I wanna write 500 words a day. Maybe it's not even a word count. I just wanna write for 30 minutes every single day. Whatever works best for you, set yourself some goals, set yourself some deadlines, and hold yourself accountable. Tip number 3 is to break up your writing sessions and to write wherever and whenever you can. In that drafting vlog where I was trying to keep track of my progress every day, you'll see I was writing on the train coming home from work during my commute every day. I was writing over my lunch hour. I was writing while I was standing in the line at the grocery store. Carry a notebook with you. I personally write in the notes app on my phone, especially if you're someone who always uses the excuse that I don't have enough time for writing, and we'll get into that excuse later on this list. I am telling you, writing like 5 minutes here and there throughout the day, it adds up. I would come home at the end of the day after work and I had written 800 words just on my phone, just from like waiting for the train and things like that. It adds up. Tip number 4 is all about momentum. I've always had this mindset, whether it was test taking in school or writing or whatever, try your hardest on writing the scene that you're on. But if you're really getting stuck, if you're feeling like your momentum is slowing down, skip it. Come back to it. You don't have to write things in order. If you're having a really hard time, skip it. You can come back to it. I am notorious for, in my rough drafts, putting in brackets what was supposed to happen, or even just come back and finish later. I'm moving on to the next scene. No one's gonna see this first draft but you. You can do whatever you want. Tip number 5 is something that I use all of the time, and that is stopping in the middle of a scene or in the middle of a chapter one day so then you can pick up from where you left off the next day. I do this because I find it easier to jump back into a scene I was already in the middle of, or jumping into a chapter that was already going, you know, instead of starting on a brand new chapter, a blank page, and having to start over kind of. So leaving off in the middle of something, for whatever reason, psychologically for me was easier to dive back into the next day. Or even if I did get to the end of a chapter, I would leave in brackets on the next page notes for myself of where I was going with the chapter, so I'm already ready. I know what I'm gonna write the next day. Tip number 6, make a music playlist for your novel and listen to it throughout the day when you're not writing. This works for me. It might not work for you. I really love music, and certain songs really put me in the mood to write, and I always make playlists specific to my novels that kind of go with the mood of the novel. Maybe even the lyrics kind of coincide with things that are happening in the novel, and I'll listen to that throughout the day. I'll listen to it while I'm working out, I'll listen to it while I'm commuting or whatever, and it just kind of puts me in that mindset to write. And so then when it's finally time to sit down and write, I feel like I can just kind of jump back into it because all day I've kind of been subconsciously thinking about my story. Tip number 7 might arguably be the most important one on this list, especially if you are someone who has a hard time finishing your drafts. Acknowledge your excuses for what they are. Excuses. I'm just gonna go on a little tough love rant here just for a second. Whatever your excuse may be, I don't have enough time to write, I'm tired when I get home from work, I have writer's block, I have too many other responsibilities, whatever it may be, whatever it is that in your mind is keeping you from writing or finishing your draft, these are excuses. And until you acknowledge that these are excuses, you're just going to give them more power than they deserve, because the fact of the matter is, if you really wanted to write the book, you would make it happen. People make time for the things that they care about. Like I said, I was writing on the train home from work, I was writing over my lunch break, I was writing standing in line at the grocery store. So what it comes down to is you need to decide, how important is this to you? How much do you want this? Why are you doing this in the first place? There's no secret to productivity. There aren't certain people that have more time in the day to get it done. There will come a time when you just need to acknowledge that these are excuses and decide that you're not going to let them get in your way anymore and get the work done. And this jumps straight into my tip number 8, which is get it done. There are no shortcuts. It's just like weight loss and all of those stupid products that advertise, take the pill and you'll lose the weight. Like, there is no shortcut. Whether you're writing 50 words per day or 5,000 words per day, if you're doing it consistently, eventually you're gonna get the book done. That's all there is to it. But nobody else is gonna write the book for you. And frankly, no one else cares about your excuses except for you. And no one even cares about your writing and whether or not you get it done except for you, unless you have like a publisher waiting on you. But no one is ever going to care about your book as much as you are. No one is ever gonna care about your goals or your dreams as much as you are, as much as your family might be supportive or whatever. No one is ever going to care as much as you do. And so if you can't even bring yourself to care enough to do whatever it takes to get it done, and this isn't an official tip, but I feel like it needs to be said. It's almost a cliche at this point from how much people say it, but your first draft doesn't have to be good. In fact, it probably will not be good, and that's perfectly okay. Just get it down on paper. You can make it better later. Getting it down on paper is arguably the hardest part, especially if this is your first novel. Just finish it. Don't go back and try to edit it as you go. Don't go back and reread it a million times. Just get it done. One of my favorite sayings is, you can edit a horrible first draft, but you can't edit a blank page. So even if it takes you 2 years to write it, get it done. So those are all of my tips for today. I would love to see what you guys have to say down below in the comments if you have any other tips. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having an awesome day. I hope the writing is going well. If you are in the middle of a draft right now, I feel for you. I hope it's going well. You can do it. I believe in you. If you're new here, I would love it if you would subscribe and stick around. I put up at least 2 to 3 new videos every single week. All of my links are down below in the description if you want to come follow me elsewhere. I have freelance services for manuscript evaluations, editing, all of that kind of stuff if you would like to work with me. I'll just see you guys in my next video very, very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you, I feel a connection. With